Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me for this live yet again. Very interesting live with Dr. Melissa West, who's the Yin Yoga teacher. We'll be talking about the autumn energetics with us in this live session today. So I am just waiting for Dr. Melissa to join us, and we'll start the session in some time. So yeah, I see Dr. Melissa there. Dr. Melissa, if you could just send me a join request, I'll let you in. Okay. Okay, I think she should be joining us in a moment. Okay. Hello.
Hi,
Hello, Dr. Melissa. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, good, great. All well. How are things?
Good. Having a good morning.
Yeah, it's okay. It's morning there. Yeah,
Yeah.
we have afternoon here right now. Okay, perfect.
I'm just
So
gonna
thank you.
adjust my camera. There we go.
Okay, yeah, perfect. So yeah, thank you so much for accepting my invite for this Instagram live today. And I have been practicing some of the yoga that you have been guiding specifically on the yin lines, and it works. So, I thought maybe why not have a word with you about, because I think you have been very highly talking about the seasonal aspect of yoga. So, which is what actually captured my interest as well. So, I would really want to talk about autumn energetics, what is the energy of the changing weather and what do's and don'ts about yoga mainly. And then if you have other inputs on diet and lifestyle about what should be the do's and don'ts for this season. So, yeah, over to you. My first question, of course, is help us understand the energetics of the season.
Yeah. This metal element season, autumn, is probably my favorite season. Um, I don't know. They're all my favorite seasons,
Mm-hmm,
but autumn is really special because yang begins to descend into yin. It's a really more introspective
mm-hmm,
season. It's a quieter season. And oh God, it's just such a special season. Last night, the ancestors are so close. Last night, my grandfather came and visited
mm-hmm,
me in a dream. It's been just over a year since his passing, and the main organs of the um, season are our lungs and our large intestines, and the lungs are the organ of grief, and
mm-hmm.
the large intestines are the organs of letting go. And in this dream I had about my grandfather last night, he he fell, and that's how he died. Well, that was the beginning of his descent towards his death. He
Okay.
fell, which is very common.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, the anniversary of his death is just opens up that portal to grief his loss in my life again.
Mm-hmm.
He was one of the most important people in my life. And it is just, the veil is very thin at this time of year, and our lungs are just such a porous organ too. And so this time of year is a time to reflect back. It is a
Mm-hmm.
time to reflect on the preciousness of our lives and on the people who made it possible for us to be here too.
Okay.
All our ancestors, all our teachers, all the golden path
Mm-hmm.
that led us to who we are and how we are in this life. And
So
yes,
are we saying that this is the time when the energy of grief and sadness naturally may happen to people as compared to other times in the year?
yeah, absolutely. This is a time when don't be surprised when grief and sadness come knocking at your door.
Mm-hmm.
And you may notice it's a time of year when you celebrate the anniversary of the loss of people in your life. I don't know if that's true for you. Yeah, my grandmother also died around this time of year. We also, my mother-in-law passed just recently as well. So it seems like a time when people exit as
So
well. It's me. I don't know
is
if
it
that's true for you in your life.
yeah, so is it also the case that the health conditions, so of course there's a dark side and the light side of every aspect. So energetically, when we are trying to associate this time with grief and sadness, physically also the body is really prone and probable to maybe attack to diseases or flare up of conditions which may which may turn up chronic for the people who already have chronic conditions. So is there something in that energetics on the physical side as well?
Yeah, well, of course, I mean, I think we like to separate these things out, but
Mhm.
there are, even in the way we teach, we like to separate them out. Like, well, this is the physical, this is the mental, this is the energetic, this
Yeah.
is the spiritual, but the emotional body is interconnected with the physical body,
Yeah.
right? So that's what we're talking about with the lungs right now, being
Hmm.
connected to the emotional body. And of course, at this time of year, you see respiratory infections coming up more. And so that's very normal.
Okay.
You get the lungs.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you start to, it's a good idea to be preparing to look after your lungs and your
Hmm.
breathing, right? Your lungs. So we focus on breathing more. It's a good idea to be clearing out your nasal passages with like neti pot is a really good idea
Hmm.
so that you can breathe clearly. Also, just keep um, the bacteria and the infections that are coming in at bay, but just so that you can breathe clearly.
Okay.
Yeah, because it is a really, the lungs are a very tender organ, right? Tender in that they are sort of like your skin, and
Hmm.
those two are related. They are your first line of defense
Yeah.
against external pathogens, right? So you're breathing in, you're drawing in the external world, and it's your nose is like a way that you filter that, and you're breathing out and you're letting
Hmm.
go. And so, of course, that's how your large intestine is connected with that as well.
Okay. So on the other side, in the language of movement, how do we connect, what movement practices, or are there any concepts which kind of help us streamline, okay, these are the practices that are an absolute must for the season? I do understand when you say the energetics is very closely associated with our lungs and a large intestine. So I'm assuming, of course, practices, lung practices and your lower abdominal practices are an absolute must for this time. So, but what's your say on that?
Yeah. So this is a time of year of slowing down,
Hmm.
right? And particularly to prepare to conserve energy. So, and that's very important. It's not a time to be rushing. So, breath practice is really beautiful at this time of year. Just simply following your breath in and following your breath out. Your lungs and your large intestine, your lung meridian, it goes along the inside of your
Hmm.
arm, and your large intestine along the outside of your arm.
Okay.
So we can also do yin poses that open up our lung meridians,
Hmm.
right? But knowing too that that can also be kind of activating, right?
Hmm.
So we want remembering that at this time of year, we really are preparing to conserve our energy. And
Hmm.
so my students and I talk about this a lot, that yin yoga is the secret sauce to sleep. We use it at the end of the day. I use it at the end of the day,
Hmm.
and I use it to prepare to sleep. So when we're talking about preparing to conserve our energy, it's a
Hmm.
beautiful practice to do at the end of the day to prepare for a beautiful night's sleep. So often we're rushing into the next day,
Hmm.
right? Going to bed thinking about the next day and wondering why we're having problems sleeping,
Hmm.
instead of entering into that time of night, which is the most yin phase of the whole cycle of the day, right?
Yeah.
Which is night,
Yeah.
where it is the time where the most repair in our body can
Yeah.
happen, right? It's
Yeah.
the winter phase of the night, day,
24
where we can,
hours.
right, of the 24 hours. So where we can actually conserve, rebuild, gestate, right?
Hmm.
So if we were looking at the autumn season of the 24 hours, it's that time before we go to bed where we're preparing to conserve our energy. And so often we just kind of rush all the way through our day, even are thinking about our next day before we even get into bed, and then wonder why we're restless all through the night, why our minds are waking us up. And I think it's a really beautiful to be skillful about the way we approach the conservation of energy, which is so much about what metal element season and autumn is about.
Okay.
Which
So
will,
when we are, sorry, I'm cutting you there, but another question there. So when we are saying conserving of energy during this phase of the day, which resembles the
mm-hmm,
autumn energy,
mm-hmm.
uh, it's important to keep in mind the meridians as well, like which are resonate with autumn, and then work on those meridians, which naturally are going to be active because this is their season of being active. So,
Mm-hmm.
or are we talking about total body conservation by maybe doing some full body practices? So how do we make out that? Do we work just on the meridians or the whole body, considering season, external season as well as internal season, also the season of 24 hours?
So when I'm practicing before I go to bed, I really focus on the lower body meridians because they
Mm-hmm.
help me to ground, get into my body. They help to drop my energy down.
Mm-hmm.
As I said before, with the metal element meridians, the
Mm-hmm.
lungs and the large intestine, they can be up in the upper body, which is also up closer to our head, and they can
Mm-hmm.
be kind of stimulating.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't love the upper body meridian holds
Mm-hmm.
for the metal element season per se,
Okay.
because they are kind of
Energizing
stimulating and
and activating.
energizing
Yeah.
and activating.
Okay.
Yeah, so I do
So
like to keep them in.
where does the role or understanding of meridians come into the place? Keeping, that thought in mind that working on upper body is going to be energizing, and if you're working on upper body at night, it might just, give you another phase of just feeling like waking up, and then working on the lower body. But we also know that this is the time when this upper body meridian is influenced by the autumn energy. So where do we draw that line there? Like, also working on those meridians, but also keeping in mind that this is a time to slow down. So we kind of create a balance between how much we work on the upper body and how much do we work on the lower body to prepare ourselves for the winters and getting into that shell and reflecting and all of that.
I think this is where the experience of your own practice really comes in, right?
Okay.
And I think there's probably a difference. So if you were going to, like it's the difference between being literal and connecting to the energy of the season.
Mm-hmm.
So if you were going to a Chinese medicine doctor, I'm assuming and you had a grief, that energy is very slow moving, for
Yeah.
example. Or if you had a respiratory infection, that mucus is very slow, right? It needs to
Yeah.
be moved,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So it's a different
Yeah.
energy that
Yeah.
needs
Yeah.
a kind of
Activation to kind of
activation,
get
right?
released. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Same with if you were talking about large intestine energy like constipation,
Mm-hmm.
it also needs
Everything that slows
that.
down in the body that causes stagnation, right? That's what simply I
Right.
understand that.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's sort of different than if we take a step back. And this is where your own personal practice comes in, where we can bring our own curiosity and our own experience and we can
Mm-hmm.
experiment, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in the autumn season, if yang is descending into yin
Mm-hmm.
and we're preparing to conserve energy,
Mm-hmm.
then like it's also like what is happening for me, right?
Yeah.
you know so each person is unique and individual. Like I see there's a question
Yeah.
here from Red Poppy Flower, right?
Yeah.
In moon salutation, which involves raising the arms overhead, would you consider that to be appropriate for autumn? So moon salutation is the perfect example, right? Experiment in your own practice. I've always found moon salutations, which are supposed to be very yin and feminine,
Mm-hmm.
to be very stimulating and energizing. So this
Mm-hmm.
is where we can read the books, take the theory, and then bring it to our own mat and see what happens for us in our own practice.
I think that's where I believe there's another concept, what Ayurveda talks about, where you should be knowing your condition and constitution and what is your state of being at that point in
Mm-hmm.
time when you're practicing.
Mm-hmm.
What's your health condition? What is your mental state? If it's
Mm-hmm.
already stimulating, then slow down. If you think you can take a little more activation, go ahead with that. If that practice is more about releasing and relaxation. So as you rightly said, it's more about self-reflection, and that's where I think that concept of knowing yourself, what's going on in your body, in your mind during your practice, I think is very important.
And I do think it's important we see ourselves as separate from nature,
Hmm.
right? And as being able to control nature,
Yeah,
but we're not separate from nature, right? We
yeah,
are part of it. And if we look outside in the seasons right now, the seasons, it's slowing down.
yeah.
The days are shorter,
Hmm.
and the leaves are falling from the trees, so there's more space. It's quieter. And so this is this time of year is inviting us to make these same changes in our lives. And in our culture, we like to always go quickly. We
Yeah,
like to always be achieving. We like to always be producing.
doing, yeah.
Right. But
So I have
this
a
is
question here, Dr. Melissa. I think that's a very curious question that I have for like what quite a lot of years, and I have been trying to find solution for that. I mean, of course, I do understand some aspects of it, but as per this energy, we should ideally be slowing down, right? But as you also rightly said, our routines or our lifestyle or the kind of pressures that we have, um, commitments to others, even if we want, we may not be able to slow down. So, and that's a practical scenario. So, and gradually it becomes your second nature. It becomes a habit. Like for me, I remember there was a time when, so I'm in Ayurveda terminology, I'm very pitta kind of a person. So I need to be doing something or the other all the time, or thinking or planning, or so that kind of a personality. Now, when this time comes over, even though I know that I should be slowing down, I should be taking things easy and go by the flow of what the energy is, somewhere I'm not able to. Over years, I've kind of learned how to do that slowly, gradually, but I think I'm still not there. It's still work for myself. But because I know about it, maybe I'm making that conscious effort of knowing, let me flow by the energy of this season. For a lot of people, this concept is completely like it's an unknown concept. And I think these are the kind of people who might experience a lot of lows, depressive symptoms, or anxiety, or just feeling out of the place during the season, just feeling disconnected with the outer world, because that slowness in the environment somewhere has an impact on your mind, and there's something else going on in your mind which is more active and which is more on the doing side. So from the yogic perspective, specifically because you majorly deal in yoga as well, what would be your suggestions on for such people who want to get onto this journey of learning to slow down, maybe with yoga practices or lifestyle practices, whatever you would want to share. But yeah, slowly getting into that realm of merging themselves with the flow of the energy that autumn stands for.
Yeah, I think this is why, and this is a beautiful season because I think that what you're saying is very true. We feel that we don't have a choice, right? We
Hmm.
feel like we live in a culture where we have financial burdens, financial
Yeah,
obligations. We have our families that we have to look after. We all have to pay our rent or mortgage.
yeah,
We have to put food on the table. And these create pressures that make us feel that we can't slow down, right? And then, so I think this is the beauty of autumn season because it's not asking us to make this big sweeping change, right? In autumn, we prepare to conserve our energy, right? It's a transitional
hmm,
season. So it's not asking us to jump to the finish line. It's asking
okay,
us what can we do to prepare to conserve our energy. So again, why don't we use the 24-hour cycle again as an
hmm,
example? We're not going to just like rush right up through our day and jump into bed and expect to fall asleep, right?
yeah,
There's so much information on television about our morning on television on social
Okay.
media
Yeah.
about our morning routines,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But I think even more supportive to us is this transitional time between when we're finished our work and when we go to bed, that transitional time, right? Can we prepare to go to bed, right? So there are lots of things, and can we focus on
Mhm.
transitional times, right?
So
Like,
what would be those, are we talking of a mindset shift there? Are we talking of some, physical yogic practices that we can use as a tool to bring our mind into that state that we're talking about? Or are we talking of any specific, food practices that can help us reach there? So how are we trying to kind of get into that state from finishing work and sleeping in between that time? Or we can pick up any angle. I mean, it's up to us, like, what works best for you, and you start there. So how does it go?
yeah, it's such a good question. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, um, there are so many ways we can do it. So to start to pay attention to transitions.
Hmm.
So for example, in your yoga practice, just notice when you come from one pose and you move to another, are you honoring that transition between one pose and the other? Are you
Hmm.
preparing for how you are going to conserve your energy
Hmm.
from one pose to the other? We sort of look at these spaces in between as non-events, right? And
Yeah.
rush to get to the next
Yeah.
one. But
Yeah.
we all have the freedom, no matter how busy your life, no matter how many obligations we have, we all have the freedom to choose how we're going to be in those spaces, right?
Yeah.
Something as simple as you go from your kitchen to your bathroom, what is the pace
Hmm.
with which you are moving there? Are you rushing from the kitchen to
Yeah.
the bathroom? When you are at work and you're going to your break, are you moving quickly or slowly, right? When you speak, are you speaking quickly or slowly,
That's
right?
beautiful.
When you
Being
breathe,
mindful of everything that you're doing, just observing yourself, being a witness there.
right? Yeah.
Mhm.
When you breathe, you can, in autumn, it's about letting go. So can you follow your breath out? We all have the freedom to follow our breath, right? Can you
Yeah.
really follow that breath out and really savor each breath out, right? This season is about honoring the preciousness of our lives. If we didn't have our breath, we wouldn't have life, right?
True.
This is a beautiful thing to be able to follow each breath out. Each breath out can be a letting go of that habit of rushing
Okay.
to really
Okay. That's fine.
relax. Mhm.
Perfect. No, but I think that that's a great starting point, and it's I think it's more about being mindful of the most basic requirement that your body has for survival, which is your breath.
Mhm.
Right.
Mhm. Mhm.
Great. So, okay, Dr. Melissa, my next question is, according to TCM and Yin philosophy, okay, we've discussed that, like what are the meridians? So, keeping the meridian philosophy in mind, what, according to you, this season has the potential for to heal in a person who may have specific kind of health concerns? Or do you think this time is not conducive for healing? This time is just conducive for preparing to heal and get into that stable season of winter and then focus on healing. So, what should be the approach during the season? Overall, from the maybe from dietary perspective, from healing perspective, you call it, or from the perspective of operating our own selves and knowing that okay, the season for me is meant to do this, and let me focus on this. And once I reach there, which is more of a stable season, I'll put my energies into doing something that I really want to do, which may maybe more about activation and maybe taking ahead your exercising goals and going intense with that, or your dietary practices going more intense with that. So how do we approach the season in terms of our way of life?
Yeah. Mm, beautiful question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. So this there's there's so many layers of answers to that. Again, we can look at it emotionally, we can look at it physically, we can look at it spiritually. Um, so this season is a season where you're going to focus on let's focus on the large intestines because we haven't focused on them as much. So it's a season of
Yeah.
letting go of doing so much, creating space in our schedules. So just in the same way that the leaves are letting go and there's space, and the trees become skeletons, we want to have more skeleton-like schedules.
Hmm.
So there's more
That,
space,
that
more
that's a nice
white
description,
space.
skeleton-like schedule. Okay.
We want to drop back so that there's more space.
Hmm.
And the reason for this, in the same way, the leaves drop to the ground
Hmm.
and they become compost for the soil, right? So what we're letting go of, I think we have a real fear of letting go
Yeah,
in our in our
that's true.
culture,
Yeah.
but we can have these really beautiful rituals for letting go. We can look back at our lives and our year especially and see what we what maybe wouldn't what didn't harvest, what didn't come to fruition,
Hmm.
and take some time and maybe even have a little ceremony and ritual for what didn't come to fruition and honor that, because the things that are going into the soil become compost, and there's this inner alchemy that can happen, and therefore something else can become fertilizer for something else to be birthed in the spring, right? First,
Hmm.
we have to go into this long winter, which becomes this period of gestation. But letting go is very important, a very important part of the season. So
Okay.
yeah,
Okay. So, I would just want to step back a little and talk about the metal energy, which is high in this specific autumn season. Now, uh, you and I may understand what is metal energy for somebody who's kind of have is having certain specific patterns to their health or to their emotions, to the how the thoughts flow during this time. I'm sure it's a lot to do with, like, if they kind of jot it down altogether, it will the pattern will start to show up where it shows, okay, it shows like an imbalance of metal energy, right? Or maybe in some other season, imbalance of some other energy. So uh, how can a person, no, common person who doesn't understand these concepts of metal energy and even energetics, can relate to their, maybe what's going on in their body and mind, and say, okay, okay, let me just look at it like an imbalance, which is the trait of the specific season, and let me bring in the opposite qualities to bring about balance in me. So on a daily basis, what are such things that a person can relate to, which may indicate imbalance for the season, and what should they be doing opposite to kind of bring in that balance on day-to-day basis? Like, it could be from lifestyle perspective, from diet perspective, even from yoga perspective.
yeah. Thank you. Beautiful questions that you're
I'm
asking. Thank you
just
so much.
extracting questions from what you're saying, so that I'm just thinking around that.
So um, I think you come from a very Ayurvedic perspective, and also I think the five element perspective is very much this way, which is kind of pathologizes people and sees
Hmm.
people as needing to fix themselves, you know?
Hmm. Hmm.
And
And I think I'm coming from that space only. I mean, this question comes from that
yeah,
space.
that question comes from that space. And I come from a very different perspective than that
And I would
space.
love to know that. I mean, what's
Yeah,
a different understanding to
yeah.
this?
So for me, I see everybody as perfect, whole, and complete, and we're all unique individuals. And also, I come from a much more, I guess, if I had to pigeonhole it, I would say a much more Buddhist perspective,
Hmm.
and also from a perspective of impermanence, and that we're always shifting and changing, right?
Yeah.
So rather than seeing ourselves as imbalanced or imperfect anyway,
Hmm.
that through the day, through a 24-hour period, and through the seasons, and through the moon cycles, we're always shifting and changing,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
there's no problem with that. There's no problem with that at all. The problem comes when we fight these energetic shifts, right?
Hmm. True.
So when we align with this energy, so in metal element season in autumn, yang descends into yin. And so when we align with that, when we welcome the energy of grief, when we prepare to conserve our energy, when we take care of our lungs by like really a big part of preparing to conserve our energy is like canning and like I've been making herbal teas and I've been foraging and I like I made this beautiful herbal
Oh,
tea
nice. What's
and
that?
I've been
What kind of tea is that?
this is one that I made because my students love nervous system
Okay.
stuff. So this is a calming nervous system tea to support your vagus nerve, but it would also be, I've been making like elderberry syrup, and here in in the Pacific Northwest, we in the UK elderberries are plentiful, right?
Yeah.
But here in on Vancouver Island in Victoria where I live, we don't have
I see
elderberries. But what we do,
a lot of herbs and elderberries that you're talking about. Elderberry is just one of the examples, but rose hips and all of that, just growing in the wild near the vicinity that I'm staying. So it's,
right?
and I sometimes get confused, like because it's so abundantly available. Sometimes I think, is it okay to kind of plug them and use them for for making whatever you would want to? So
And this
I
is a
brought.
big part of preparing to conserve. And the herbs that are abundant in your area are the
Mhm.
herbs that you need, the people that you where you live need to
Mhm.
heal.
Oh,
So
that's why
where
it's
I
growing there.
live,
It's a similar
right,
ideology. Yeah.
where I live, Oregon berries are very plentiful.
Hmm.
And so you can make the same kind of elderberry syrup with Oregon berries, the same thing that is great for boosting your immune system.
Hmm.
And even when you get a cold, you can take it for more acute colds, right? So for respiratory colds, right?
Hmm.
So when we're talking about preparing, like it's a season of preparation
Yeah.
for winter because in winter everything's dead. We
Yeah.
still have a little bit of time left. Um, yeah, and so whatever medicine is available, and certain plants will call to you, right?
Yeah.
And so these ones I picked fresh and then I've dried them
Oh, you
and I'm
dried
going
it?
to make,
Amazing. What's
yep.
that?
These ones are rose hips, like you
Oh,
said,
even I
rose
have a
hips.
lot of rose hips.
Yep.
How do you dry them out? Because I got some, but they just got spoiled because I couldn't understand how do I go ahead with using them.
Yeah, I got a dehydrator
Oh,
on Facebook
you oh,
Marketplace
perfect.
for very
Perfect.
inexpensive,
Yeah.
and I dehydrated them, and I'm gonna you could I've been meditating with these by making I make a tea and then I
Hmm.
meditate with the tea,
So do you
and then
powder them or do you use it like raw?
just using them whole,
Okay.
and then I'm gonna make some facial serums with
Hmm.
them. Like
Nice.
there's so much you can do with them, and these are one of the things that tempers metal element season is um, fire. It, like metal can be very kind of about like it is literally like a knife or a shovel,
Hmm.
and fire softens. And rose hips are great for the heart, right? So it brings a
Hmm.
softness to this season. So yeah, everything that we need is right here for us,
Yeah,
but we do need to be open to it, right?
that's true.
Yeah.
That's great. So nice talk about herbs. That's altogether a different topic to discuss for sure.
Hmm.
So
But it
coming
isn't
back,
different, right? We're part of it.
yeah,
And we
for
think, I think we've been conditioned to believe that we need to buy everything, pay for everything, and
yeah,
everything needs to be expensive. And it doesn't, what we need, our ancestors have taught us.
yeah,
And you and I come from very different ancestries, right?
yeah.
I come from a Celtic ancestry,
Hmm.
and
I
we have different medicines
yeah.
from our ancestors that we have learned and have been passed down from us, and we can tap into these, and they can keep us healthy through the whole
Yeah.
year.
Right. So, what I meant was like, uh, for the purpose of this session that we're talking about, it was majorly like yoga and diet and lifestyle all coming together. So, but each aspect can be picked up and talked about in depth in its own way. So, coming back to again back to yoga. So we are majorly boiling down onto this idea about keeping our lungs healthy during this time, keeping our large intestine flowing during this time to just let go. What would be some dietary tips that you would want to share and yoga tips, or maybe some yoga practices which can strengthen these two organs?
Um, For lungs, I think simple breath practice, and I think it goes very underrated,
Yeah.
but just breath awareness. Sitting, following your breath in and following your breath out. If you just did that, the
Is there any
whole,
minimum, is there any minimum time frame that you should be,
how long are people doing
staying?
their breath practice already? Like, let's start with
Hardly
five
any,
minutes.
hardly any,
Right.
yeah.
I know
Yeah,
we will all want to do these really fantastic,
asanas.
right. We want
Yeah,
it to be fancy.
yeah.
We want it to be like, I see, if you were to put breath awareness on social media or in a class, it would get glossed over because it looks like nothing is
That's
happening.
right.
The whole practice can unfold by following your breath in
Hmm.
and your breath out. The whole practice. So
That's true. So it's
I
kind
know
of
it
a
doesn't sound
foundational,
fancy. It's
it's foundation to
absolutely
whatever you're doing next.
foundational,
Yeah,
and it can take you all the way.
exactly. I
So follow,
absolutely agree to that.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
I mean, your practice feels different even when you're following flow on the same day during the same hours. When you start, you see a lot more stiffness, and gradually you see how you just start to melt in that practice, and your muscles become loosened. And the more you breathe and inhale and exhale, the more you're able to, create space and expand yourself.
yeah. So if you aren't doing any breath awareness, start with 4 minutes and then add a
Slowly.
minute.
How much you do then is up to you.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. So
Yeah.
yeah, okay, breath practices is one thing definitely for the lungs, which we all know. Anything that you think which is so very common that we should be knowing and we should be doing even if we know we are not doing it, apart from breathing practices, of course.
So that was for the lungs. For large intestines, I think twist, right?
Abdominal twists.
Abdominal twist. And also, I think one thing that gets left out when I'm just thinking about yin specifically right
Yeah, yeah,
now,
that's
right?
where I'm seeking some answers on.
I think one of the where we get tripped up, like constipation, actually, because it's a drying
Yeah.
season, all the wind, um, and so constipation kicks up in this season.
Hmm.
So um, I think that constipation is because tends to be because we're trying to control life and tightening our grip on life. So really,
Controlling, not letting go, holding. I mean,
right,
those emotions
right,
getting stuck.
yeah. So when it's a terrible thing to say to somebody to relax, but to
I know.
give yourself more space for relaxation practices. So a lot of what we've been talking about, right? These
Mhm.
transitional times, like just not, it sounds, I don't mean to sound condescending, but invite yourself to have space in your day to lie down. I love yoga nidra, right?
Yeah,
It's a great practice
yeah.
too that allows your kind of conscious control tower mind to just
Keep things
step
aside and
aside.
just be yourself.
Yeah, yeah. But
Mm.
when I do my yin practice at night, I'm like I said on one of your posts recently,
Hmm.
like legs up the wall is a
Oh,
daily
yeah.
non-negotiable for me.
Yeah.
Because for me, the way I experience that pose is it's like I know sometimes it gets called waterfall pose. It is like just everything
Again,
washes off of me for the day.
nourishing and the blood coming
Yeah,
to the areas where you really need flushing.
yeah, yeah. But more than that, it's like it's just the day falls off me,
Hmm.
like all the tension falls away. Yeah, so there's
Yeah.
a lot of letting go that happens in that pose. Like
So is
this
there
is where
any
I feel like
specific, oh,
our practice, like if we can become our own scientists in our own practice and see what works for us,
yeah.
like that's a very letting go pose for me. If you look in your books for poses for letting go,
Hmm.
you're never going to see legs up the
Oh, yeah.
wall.
Yes.
But for me, that's a, a daily non-negotiable for me to let
Hmm.
go of tension.
Perfect. So,
Mm.
okay, and now from the food perspective, any specific food perspective or maybe lifestyle perspective, like you should not be consuming this or you should be consuming this, the do's and don'ts for lungs and large intestine. Is there anything that you would want to recommend for that?
So I think I mean, I'm not really a huge expert on this area, but
Mhm.
I think again, nature is going to provide us with what we need in the
True.
season. So to not eat out of season. So for example, yesterday when we went to the market to pick up food, that we there are some ever-bearing strawberries in our
Hmm.
area, and
Hmm.
they were at the market for 8.50 for a little pint, and they look
Yeah.
gorgeous.
Yeah.
But and my husband said, "Oh my God, I almost like they look so good." But I said, "No, we're not getting those because
It
they're
looks
not in
tempting. You
season."
you
It
tend to
looks
get
they look
tempted looking
so
all those colors, the
I know.
juiciness. Yeah.
They look
Yeah.
so
And then you
good.
have to hold back. Okay, no, not for the season.
No. So we want to eat like really warming foods, of course, at this time of year, right?
Hmm.
We want, for fruits, we want to eat the apples that are in season, and of course, like your root vegetables are very grounding
Hmm.
and sweet and nourishing and warm and moist, right? All these things that are
Yeah.
going to help us with digestion.
Yeah.
As I say, I'm not a huge expert on this
Okay.
area.
Perfect.
Yeah.
No problem. Okay. Okay. So my last question to you would be, I want to really take it from the practical aspect of how people look at their health or well-being or whatever their health goals are, irrespective of what season we are in. So for, fitness enthusiasts, like the people going gymming and doing all those intense practices, and if even if somebody is wanting to go for a weight loss or just for the fitness purpose, and people who practice fitness practices in the fitness field are really particular about what they want to do. So day and night does not matter to them, seasons do not matter to them. It's like everyday practice without fail. Um, and they may kind of, even though the season demands to go slow during this time, they may go against all those concepts, and somebody's gymming will go ahead and do gymming for 1 hour or 45 minutes and do the intense practices. Would you recommend this way of life? If not, do you think it can, maybe not immediately, but there could be some impact of that intensity, which it doesn't resonate with the season? If yes, in what forms it may show up?
Yeah, thanks. Good question. So, um, I don't know if you know, or you may know, my background is in fitness.
Oh yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
amazing.
I started as like, I've been teaching yoga for over 23
Wow.
years.
Wow.
Prior to that, I was teaching Pilates. Prior to that, I was teaching like
Oh,
old-fashioned,
that's amazing.
like
I
aerobics,
wasn't aware of that.
spin.
Perfect.
I
So you've
was
been into
teaching
all those
step.
fitness.
Yeah, I was teaching like,
Great.
grapevine, step, touch,
Wow.
knee up, like all that stuff.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Also, I'm a postmenopausal woman.
Uh-huh.
I love weightlifting. I weightlift several, like, and heavy.
So that's like
I
the
wait,
way you use the weights, or do you kind of practice yoga, which kind of
I,
itself exerts your own body's pressure?
I lift heavy.
Uh-huh.
Bar on my back, squats,
Wow,
deadlifts,
that's amazing.
the whole thing. So, and I do that year round, and I've been doing that for several years. So I'm familiar with this world.
Hmm.
And there's a rhythm in the seasons to this kind of, um, uh, I'll speak about my weightlifting.
Hmm.
So in the spring and summer, it really picks up for me.
Hmm.
I will, I will lift 4 to 5 times a week, and I will have the energy for it. But at this time of year, it slows down. I lift around 3 times a week, and I go outside and I walk more,
Okay, you
and
still
I
do it, but you
practice
try to
yoga.
bring about that balance with other
I don't
calming practices, maybe.
try, my own body just slows down. And anybody who is serious, serious about weight lifting, about their um, exercise, will
Hmm.
know that the magic happens in the rest.
Yeah,
It doesn't happen when you're doing
that's
it,
true.
it happens in the repair.
Yeah.
It's the same. The magic doesn't happen in the day, it happens
Hmm.
at night when
Hmm.
you're sleeping. If you are trying to heal, the most important part of that 24-hour cycle
Yeah, sleep.
is, again, in the sleep. But if you aren't preparing to sleep, you aren't going to be able to sleep very well.
Yeah.
So it's it's the it's the I mean, I think when I for me, my weightlifting, what's so important is my mobility training prior to my weightlifting. The weightlifting, yes, and
Hmm.
then the stretching afterwards, but it's the recovery time. Because if
Hmm.
I hop right back in the next day, my muscles haven't had enough time to recover.
Yeah.
So to push ourselves, it's to what end? It's futile. It's absolutely futile, right?
Yeah.
The gains happen in the rest.
That's true. So, what would be your
Yeah.
advice to the people? Because I've seen this trend specifically for the people who are either wanting to tone up their body or wanting to lose weight, or even if not that, just wanting to maintain themselves. For for such people, would just understand one language mostly, which is activity, 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 more of gymming, more of activity, more of calorie burning, basically, irrespective their body has that strength or not, or the season is supporting your body or not. So what would be your advice to such people who are desperately wanting to either maintain themselves or tone themselves or lose weight, get into these intense practices during the time when they should be actually taking it easy?
I think you need to educate yourself because we just have so much more information available to us now.
Yeah.
And I think I don't we know now that that doesn't work?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
I mean, yeah.
there's enough podcasts out there, there's enough people out there have done research, especially if you're a woman.
Yeah.
Like, so I'm post-menopause, so I'm not dealing with a menstrual cycle anymore. But if you're in a menstrual cycle, that's a whole other situation. Like you
Exactly.
need to be
Yeah.
honoring that
I
cycle as
completely
well.
agree to that, because I have been in that phase of when I started my teacher's training. It was like 3 hours of a practice, continuous practice, but that was the demand of the course. I mean, if you have to be a teacher, you have to get into that kind of a practice. And I could see how my body was breaking down, and there were times when I had to take painkillers and get back onto my practice initially, because the practice was intense. But later I realized, okay, that you have to really see where you stand. But one of my clients, I remember, who was, I think, who was in her perimenopausal years, later perimenopausal years, she was very intensely into gymming, and she was very particular about maintaining her personality and her skin, and which is okay, which is every female wants that. But she did not realize she had these severe episodes of migraine, to the extent that she used to faint every other day because of migraine. But she was not, her mind was not ready to accept that she needs to give a break to that 2 hours of 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours in the evening, intense gymming she was doing. And she was fainting every other day. And this was her pattern for like years, on and on and on, just for that image of maintaining herself. Her diet was completely off place, a lot of allergies. She had done some implants on her body. So it was completely that, being into that frame of physicality and just trying to be, defy that time, at the cost of her health, at the cost of uh, pushing herself to, without even realizing that she's pushing herself to even more trouble if she doesn't stop there.
Hmm.
Which is what she realized, like, oh, one migraine was there and something else came in, something else came in. And then when we started working together, I had a very hard time convincing her or having a deal with her that she's not going to exercise more than 2 hours a day, if she really wants to do it and be high on that, but more than 2 hours, and that too in a broken way. And evenings more of relaxing and restorative, and mornings intense, if at all she wants to do it, and focusing a lot on breathing practices. But I think that that's the kind of mindset that most of the people live in, right? Without understanding, uh, for the time being, it may help, but in the long run, it can just end up depleting energy. So that exercising phase may last you for a short period, not for like a lifetime, if you're into that phase of exercising.
Yeah. So what I guess what I've come to, what I've realized for myself is that I can't control anything outside of me, including, and I get that you have clients, I have students.
Hmm.
I understand that change happens with me. So
Yeah.
if I'm seeing something happen outside of myself, then I have to say, hold up, am I modeling this behavior in me, right?
Yeah.
Am I doing these constant cycles of like whatever it is I feel that everybody else should be doing? So one thing, uh, for example, something that I've been inspired to um, around that's really opened things up for me recently in my practice is asking more questions instead of looking for answers. When I ask more questions, it opens things up. It expands my
Self-inquiry, the
consciousness.
idea of
Right,
self-inquiry. Yeah.
curiosity
Yeah.
versus, uh, and it came out of a frustration that my students don't ask me questions,
Mm-hmm.
right? But I said, hold up, am I modeling asking questions? Am I
Mm-hmm.
asking questions?
Mm-hmm.
And it's turned into this beautiful practice of asking questions. Am I asking beautiful questions? And it's changed my life
Yeah.
because now my consciousness has expanded so much. I could have waited my entire life for my students to ask questions,
Yeah.
but it's not up to them, it's up to me. And this happens all the time in my life, right?
Yeah.
So this
No, that's
is,
beautiful. I think that's where you get to the depths of anything that you're wanting to do. Questions is the key to right questions is the key to getting the answers. Even knowing that, what are you seeking, it all starts with the questions, and answers is just an outcome of the questions, for sure.
hmm.
Perfect. So, okay, Dr. Melissa, I think we are about to kind of come to the end of our session. Anything that you would want to add on? Any question that you think should have been discussed here, which I may not have asked you? Anything that you would want to kind of end the conversation with?
No, I think you are so thorough in your in your questions. They're very beautiful questions.
Thank you so much.
I just want to thank you for all the beautiful work that you are doing in this world, working with your clients, all the beautiful posts that you put up on social media. You're just doing such beautiful work in the world. You're living in, I think, are you still in Toronto?
Yes, I am.
Yeah.
Not
So
in
doing,
Toronto. I'm in near Toronto. I'm in GTR area. Yeah.
yeah, you're in the Greater Toronto
Yeah.
area. So doing such beautiful introspective spiritual work in a very big city that really needs you. So,
I
thank
don't know
you.
what kind of people seek, what we do, frankly, because I see a lot of superficial way of life, and just people relating to this, to their upper layer. That's all. It's rare you find people where they really want to delve deeper into what's going on, whether or not they're ready to change themselves. And so it's definitely, it doesn't come easy, but yeah, I think I believe I'm made for it. So I just keep going and doing stuff.
Yeah, you're really in the trenches in the Toronto
Mm.
area. You really are because it's a very ambitious city,
Yeah,
and their god is money in that city.
that's true.
And so, but you, as a Pitta, are a very ambitious person. So
I just love,
you really,
I mean,
you love a good
frankly,
challenge.
I love good challenge. I love bringing about all this information, even if it is a small piece of information, but or different modalities. But I just love talking about Eastern medicine, whatever belongs to the fraternity of Eastern medicine. I love talking about that and talking to such people who are into the same zone.
Yeah, and you're doing a beautiful job of spreading such a beautiful lineage to a culture that's very much in need. So I just really want
Thank
to
you so
thank
much,
you,
and I think
acknowledge
it
you, and
equally
appreciate that
goes
for you.
equally same for you, I must say. I mean, we all are doing the same work, I must say, in our area of learnings and expertise, for sure. Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Melissa. I think it was a wonderful session, yet again, and all the best.
Yeah,
And for the people who are listening, just go back and look out for Dr. Melissa's book. She has an amazing book on. If you
yeah.
just want to talk about your book, I think I am very highly looking forward to have the book soon.
Did I not send you at least an electronic copy of it?
No, I don't think
Okay, I'll
I
get
have that.
um Send me your email. I'll get Tim to send you
Perfect. Thank
a
you so
copy
much.
of it. Yeah.
Perfect.
So this is my book. It's called Five Element Yin Yoga. It's all color coded for the
Mhm.
seasons. So
Oh, wow.
the metal element season is the white season. So we've been talking about that mostly right now. And we'll be going in winter, we're going into water element season. My husband is a photographer. He has so many great connections
Perfect
with
synergy.
people here. And I'm so proud of this book, of the really wide representation of people that we showed in the book.
Mhm.
And yeah, um, it's a beautiful book, and it really allows you to flow between the seasons and connect to yourself energetically, spiritually, emotionally, through yin yoga, which, it really is that secret sauce for your before bed practice. I practice it every day before I go to bed, and it really lets me sleep soundly at night. And um, yeah, I have tons and tons. We just released episode 709
Mhm.
today. So
Oh,
we
yeah, you
have,
have a lot of content on YouTube. A lot of.
yeah. So
It's amazing.
if you just search Melissa West Yoga on YouTube, you can find tons of full length yoga videos, including yin, but the most popular right now is Yoga Nidra. So, they can support you in resting more.
Mm.
People want to rest more.
Yeah.
It's a big need, and people, I think, recognize that they want to rest more. So there's a lot there, and it goes back it goes back 15 years now. So there's a real variety. So when I started, it was a lot of hatha yoga,
And
but
congratulations to you. That reminds me, it's 15 years of your YouTube channel, I think you
15
just completed, right?
years of
That's
YouTube
amazing.
this
That's
autumn.
amazing.
Yeah.
That's
So
amazing.
yeah, there's so much there for you. And it's true, it's not just mine. If you don't like my style of teaching, there's
I
there's
know
go find
it's
somebody
it's
else.
about
Yeah,
knowing
there's
that
a
practice.
there's a smorgasbord of practices. Find somebody you resonate with, and and immerse yourself in practice, because we do need to connect with the rhythm of the seasons and pull ourselves away from, we're using this for good right now, I think,
Yeah,
but so much time, our attention is being pulled into a swipe and a dopamine hit. And yeah, I think we can pull ourselves out of that into something so much more powerful. There's so much more within us that we can access. So yeah.
great. Thank you so much, Melissa,
Yeah, thank
for joining me
you for your
today.
time.
And all the
Thanks for the
best to you.
invitation.
Thank you. Yep.
Okay,
Bye.
bye.